Welcome back. You're on the Legal Line with Dennis Kennelly and my guest, David Fulmer, and noted immigration attorney both in Los Angeles and, more importantly to most of our listening audience, out here in Santa Clarita. So we were talking earlier about H-1B visas, but we're going to move on and go to what I call Immigration 101, and I'm going to pose the following hypothetical to our guest. David, I'm an individual in London, England, and I've always wanted to live in the U.S. I don't know anybody over here, but what do I do to what's the best way for me to get into this country? What do I do?
If you don't know anybody here, you don't have any relatives here, you don't have a job offer, then one of the best ways to get started is to apply for an E2 investor visa.
Okay, and what's one of those?
Okay, so an investor visa is, first of all, the individual has to come from a country who the United States has a treaty with, reciprocal treaty with, which we do have one with the United Kingdom. And in order to qualify, the individual would have to either purchase a business or set up a business in the United States and make a substantial investment. And
And I'm going to ask you, how does the government define a substantial investment?
That's a good question, and the regulations don't tell us what substantial means. It's a case-by-case analysis based on the facts and circumstances. But generally, when I'm asked this question, I think we try to target at least about a $200,000 investment.
Okay. So I decide I want to invest in either starting or buying a business, and where do I go from there? What's my next step?
So in order to apply for the visa, you have to first set up an entity in the United States. You have to set up a corporation or LLC. You have to lease office space. And then you have to do a business plan to show the government what you plan to do. And the main point of the business plan is to show that you're not just going to be making money for yourself, but you're going to be hiring U.S. workers. What they're looking for is a business model that's going to employ U.S. workers and bring more and more money into the U.S. economy.
Okay. Now, if I'm buying an existing business, do I get credit for the workers that are already there?
Definitely. You know, on one hand, if you set up a new business, you're creating this business plan, and you know, a lot of time when we think of business plans, people who are seeking investment from angel investors or venture capitalists make business plans to prove that the business is going to be successful. In this case, this foreign investor is making a business plan to prove to the U.S. government that the business will be successful, hire U.S. workers. But if there's an existing company with a track record, it's much stronger than this speculative business plan.
Okay, but once again, theoretically, if it's a company that's strong and is already contributing to the economy, why are we allowing an investment visa? These people don't need the money, basically.
Well, the idea being, if someone is purchasing a business instead of setting up a new business, then the idea would have to be that they are somehow improving it or enhancing it. For example, maybe there's a coffee shop that they're purchasing, and now they're going to expand it, and there's going to be a full restaurant.
Okay,
or
good.
There's a restaurant, and they're going to create a bar and catering department. So
Okay.
the money needs to be used to create more jobs.
I like that. Good examples. And who makes these decisions? To whom am I applying as a British prospective investor?
That's a very good question, because in general, most immigration applications are sent to what's commonly called immigration, which is the name of the agency is U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. However, E2 visas, the investor visa, is an exception, and those are submitted directly to the U.S. consulate in the country where the person lives.
Okay, so what I would do if I'm, once again, our hypothetical British individual, I would go down to the U.S. consulate or the U.S. embassy in London and say, I have this idea. I want to invest in Joe's Coffee Shop here in Santa Clarita, and I want to turn it into a full-service restaurant and put a bar in. and I'm willing to invest $250,000 in it, and I think I'm going to create 10 jobs, and here's my business plan, right?
Beyond that, most of the money has to be spent, and that's the real. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where we find out if somebody's really serious, because they have to spend at least 75% of the money before they even apply for the visa. The money has to be spent.
So basically, no dough, no show.
Exactly.
Okay, so once again, our poor British fellow has got his $250,000 in pounds, and so he's got to put 75% of it, which is roughly $175,000 or so. He's got to spend that before he knows if he's going to be allowed to get an e-visa.
Exactly.
Okay, in your experience, what would interest me is it often the case or rarely the case that the guy gets stiffed? Namely, he puts his 75% in and the government says thanks but no thanks.
If he starts from the very beginning and comes to and gets counsel who's going to direct him in doing it the proper way, then it's rarely the case that he will not get the visa. Because we as attorneys, we know what the law is, and this is something that we're putting together from the ground up. We can make sure that each and every aspect of it qualifies perfectly. So again, with proper counsel, it's rare that he would not qualify.
Okay, that's great to know. Now, as a practitioner, do you have a network in a number of foreign countries where you've got local lawyers referring these cases to you?
I do. I know attorneys throughout the world. I'm a member of the National Immigration Lawyers Bar Association. It's called AILA, American Immigration Lawyers Association. AILA actually has chapters in foreign countries. And I'm active in this bar association, so I know attorneys throughout the world, and sometimes we do collaborate. I work very closely with an attorney in London, and sometimes she has something that's better handled in Los Angeles, so she refers it to me, and sometimes I have a delicate matter that needs to be handled by somebody in London, so she handles it. And yes, we do have a network like that, and it's very helpful.
It sure sounds that way, because it sounds like this is the type of matter where you go to a specialist. It's like, if you've got a broken bone, you go to an orthopedist. You don't go to an ophthalmologist. And I think that network is a great idea. And I think it's great that you're out here in this area to help our local business owners, because I would imagine this comes up periodically out here.
It does. It does. I have a number of clients here in the Santa Clarita Valley, and some of them I've worked with even before I set up the office here, and a number of them I've been introduced to since I've been here.
Well, that's good. So it's a local guy, new on the scene, relatively new on the scene, that can follow through on this stuff. So it's excellent. Now, once I make my investment and I'm going to call them immigration as opposed to that long title, only to save time. But I think it's important. What's the next step?
So the individual will get their visa at the U.S. consulate in London, and let's say they have a spouse and children. They'll all get their visas. They'll land here in the U.S. They have 5-year visas.
Okay, so they're good.
When the spouse arrives,
they're good for 5 years, and
5 years.
And you can bring your. How many can you bring over?
You should bring over a spouse and children who are under 21.
Okay, so
any number as long as they're under 21.
Okay, so if I got 10 kids, they all get to come.
All of them get to come, and there's even a provision if there's a couple that are living together, not actually married. The partner doesn't get the same thing, but they do get a visa to accompany.
Okay, now what happens? Okay, so 5 years go by. What's the next step?
With this type of visa, what I often see is people renew it 5 years at a time throughout their career. Sometimes they do want to pursue permanent residence. Sometimes they don't.
Okay, how about
it is renewable 5 years at a time.
Okay, how about the kids? Let's say you've got somebody that's been here 10 years, so one of at age 21, they don't lose their protection, do they, once they turn 21?
They do. And under this scenario, at age 21, the kids would either have to go back home or enroll in a U.S. university as a foreign student. And, the visas all have letters of the alphabet, but the coding for a foreign student is F-1, F1. And so what often happens is when they turn 21, or at least really when they're 18 years old, they enroll in a U.S. university. When they turn 21, they change their visa from the dependent of an E2 investor to an F1 foreign student. And then when they graduate, then they apply for this H-1B visa.
Okay.
That's the common scenario. Yeah.
Okay, so so this is a good pool of qualified foreign applicants if you've got a position that needs to be filled that you can't fill. And I would imagine there are ways, there are clearinghouses or something that these people can get their qualifications out there so that prospective employers can find out about them.
There are. I'm not sure exactly what all of them are. I know LinkedIn is a big one. I think both employers and employees are using all kinds of social media nowadays to connect.
Okay, we've mentioned that, but let's go back to my hypothetical British person for a minute. And if I'm a British guy, I don't have $250,000 to invest, and I still want to come over here. What's the best way for me to start the citizenship process?
Well, so to become a citizen, that's kind of a long-term goal. And first, you have to have a green card or permanent residence for 5 years. Okay,
so how do I? Okay, I understand.
In order to get a green card, there are several ways. First, we have family-based. So, do you have a relative here? Employment-based. So, based on a job, like we discussed a few minutes ago. Investment-based. And I'm not talking about the E2 visa. What I'm talking about here is either a $500,000 or $1 million investment. And then we have a humanitarian situation, which this probably is not because he's in the United Kingdom. It's not like he needs asylum. So those are the basic ways to immigrate, to get a green card in the United States. And if somebody does not fit into one of those, then they should take the other route, which is a non-immigrant or temporary visa of some kind to get here, make connections, look for a job, and see if they somehow will qualify for one of the methods to actually immigrate.
Okay, I like that. So the first thing you got to do is get here and then figure out a way to stay here.
Exactly.
Now, you talked about relatives. Let's say I come over on an H-1B visa, and I come here, and I'd like to get my girlfriend in. What do I do?
So let's say you're living in England, and you have a girlfriend, and you somehow get approved for an H-1B visa. If you can show that she's a household member, that in other words, that you're living together in the UK, then she can get a special type of tourist visa to accompany you to the U.S.
How long does that?
Not quite as good as a spouse visa.
How long does the tourist visa last?
The person can get a 10-year multiple entry visa that allows them to come to the U.S. for 6 months to a year at a time. So the H-1B worker, they can come for 3 years, and the girlfriend can come and stay with the H-1B worker for 6 months to a year, and she'll have to go back, once every 6 months to a year, kind of back and forth. What I found is that that's not too disruptive because even the H-1B individual, they want to go home and see their family for holidays and for weddings and for different family events. And so they're both kind of traveling back and forth anyway, and the partner would travel with them.
Okay, that makes sense. So if you've got an H-1B visa, you've basically got unlimited going and coming to your home country, or quite frankly, anywhere else you're legal to travel. Is that correct?
Right. Well, for the most part, most countries we have this system called reciprocity. So what we in the United States do, let me give you an example with Mexico.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
Mexico only gives visas to U.S. citizens for 1 year. And so we only give visas to citizens of their country for 1 year. And even though H-1Bs can theoretically, according to the law, be 3 years long, this reciprocity concept sometimes shortens the length of the visa. And sometimes, most of the time, visas are multiple entries, so you can kind of come and go freely. Sometimes visas are only good for one entry.
So you come and you got to stay, and if you go,
Right.
you can't come back.
Yeah, for example, we talked earlier about the example of the investor visa. Believe it or not, we have a treaty still in place from many years ago with Iran for investor visas. But based on the reciprocity issue, if someone from Iran gets an investor visa in the U.S., they can only come for 3 months. Well, the visa is only good for 3 months, and it's only for one entry.
Okay, and after 3 months, they have to apply for renewal, right?
Right, exactly.
On these investor, just to circle back to a question that came up, what if at the end of 5 years, do you have to invest any more money?
No. If the investment is deemed to be sufficient, then no more money, no more investment is required, and they can stay here. And as long as the business is continuing and they're employing U.S. workers, it will be renewed generally.
Okay, and this is all done by what I call immigration, correct?
Right. Well, actually, the initial application is done at the U.S. consulate overseas, and the extensions can be done either at the consulate or at U.S. immigration here stateside.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the subject that has been coming up a lot and has been highlighted by Mr. Trump and his changes in policy. So, your office also represents individuals with immigration issues, people that want to stay, people that may be undocumented, that would like to figure out a way to stay without getting deported. How has the climate changed with the Trump presidency? What changes have you noticed?
First of all, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear. To give you an example, during the Obama administration, President Obama issued an executive order allowing for deferred action for the DREAM Act kids. You know, the DREAM Act kids are kids who are, most of the time, didn't come here willingly. They were brought here as children, and now they're going to high school, going to college graduates. And President Obama gave them the ability to get a 2-year work permit and kind of a 2-year stay of deportation. And during the campaign, President Trump said he was going to eliminate the DACA program.
That's
the dream.
That's the Dreamers. Yeah.
The Dreamers, exactly. The program hasn't been revoked, and so far there's only been one deportation that's been reported. However, people are very concerned now about either renewing it or applying for it. And sometimes they'll come to me and say, David, I qualify for this 2-year work permit. Should I apply for it? And it's a really, really hard question to answer because I don't know the future. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with this program.
I don't think anybody does, to be honest with you.
Nobody knows, exactly. We don't know. So there's a lot of fear based on kind of the tone of the campaign and the tone of what has happened in the first 100 days or so of the Trump presidency.
These are really, really tough cases because I represented a gal who was brought here at age 2, lived here. She was brought here at 6. She was supposed to be brought in earlier, but wasn't. But she came in with her mother and wound up. The Dream kids don't have any problem through high school while they're in the school system, but once they get out of high school, then it's how do I prove I've got the right to be here? And people start asking about Social Security numbers and things like that. And she wound up applying for political asylum and got it. But not everybody's going to be that lucky. We're coming up on a break right now. We're going to be back and kind of close the loop with David, who I really appreciate being here. Just write this down if you want to talk to us. Phone number is 661-298-5487. You're on KHTS, and we'll be right back on The Legal Line. You're back on the legal line with Dennis Kennelly, and who is an employment and entertainment lawyer. And today's guest, David Fulmer, is an immigration lawyer. So I have tangential knowledge of immigration. He's an expert. So we were talking about the changes in approach that you and your partners and associates might be making with the passing of the Obama administration in dealing with basic issues of staying in the country or getting the right to stay in the country. So how has your approach changed?
That's a good question. You know, right after the election, there was a lot of fear, and people thought they were going to be deported immediately. In fact, one of the local colleges asked me to come and give a speech on the day after the election about what to expect. And, of course, I didn't really know. I was mostly trying to comfort people. But now we're more into the reality, not what might happen, but what has happened. And so far, there have been a few executive orders, and they've mostly been enjoined. And the changes are not huge things that make headlines, but they're pretty subtle things that most people might not know about. Most people don't know that about something called premium processing, which has been eliminated. Premium processing is the ability to process work visa applications within 2 weeks. And normally these applications, without this extra add-on paid-for service, can take months and months to be approved, which makes it very hard for employers to make decisions. And so the premium processing program, which came into effect years and years ago, allows an employer to pay an additional government filing fee of $1,225 to get a 2-week decision, so that they can make hiring decisions and staffing decisions in a reasonable way. And in March, the Trump administration eliminated premium processing for H-1Bs. Only for H-1Bs, but remember, H-1Bs are the main tool used by companies and industry and universities. And so this means that if a company files an application, even for somebody who already has an H-1B, maybe with another company, they won't know if it's approved for 7 or 8 months. So what's the company supposed to do? What's the employee supposed to do if they don't have a decision for 7 or 8 months? So what's it caused everybody to do is to plan ahead a lot more and to think through things. And it's caused quite a shakeup, really, in the tech world.
I can imagine. You know, from 2 weeks to 8 months. I mean,
right. Now, there is a law that says that the person can start working as soon as the new application is filed. However, if you look at it from the employee's perspective, he's approved to work at company A.
Exactly.
Company B wants them, and they want to move to company B, but they don't really normally want to give up something that's solid for something that's not approved. And so it's really kind of chilled the ability for hiring and mobility between companies of these H-1B workers.
Okay. Well, that's that alone is news, but it's significant news because I think, and this is my personal opinion, that what he's trying to do is slow down the process, and I think Trump would ultimately like to eliminate a lot of the H-1B visas, but that's, again, just a personal opinion.
Well, that's not just an opinion, Dennis. There was the new executive order dated April 18th. It's called Buy American, Hire American. And that's where President Trump ordered a review of all of the immigration laws relating to all employment-based visas, and specifically H-1Bs. So it's a real thing. Yeah.
There's a change coming, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's apparent to all of us. Well, we've reached the end of our rope, or the end of our time here today. David, I really appreciate your coming on the show. You've been a font of information. How can people get in touch with you again?
They can go to my website, www.usworkvisa.com.
Okay, write that down. And before we go, I want to thank my engineer, Justin Powell, and my sturdy producer, our regular producer, Laura Espinoza London, who is fresh out of the studio cutting the last few tracks of London Rain's new album. They provide the bumper music. And I've got one other issue, and that is sports trivia. Justin, who happens to also be the station's sports director, has got a question he's going to try and stump me.
Okay, Dennis, so tonight is the NFL draft, the 2017 NFL draft, and of the last 20 years, 19 seasons so far, 19 drafts, there have only been 3 positions taken number 1 overall in the draft. Can you name those 3 positions?
Quarterback, running back, and defensive line.
Ooh, we were close. Quarterback, defensive line, and offensive tackle.
Ah.
Close enough. Good stuff, though, Dennis. Good stuff.
Okay. Hey, thanks for your help.